Hi guys, hello and welcome to Jazz Across the Pond, Jazz Interviews Reimagined. A brand new and a very, very exciting bringing together of two great nations. It's jazz talking like you've never seen or heard it before. Now, I think it's about time we nip over to the other side of the pond and see if my partner in crime is eagerly waiting to join us. Let's see. And as if by magic, he appears, all in blue. Hi, my friend.
It is magic. I mean, isn't all of this just magical? I mean, I'm still pinching myself. I can't believe everything that's happening. It's just crazy.
It is. Who would have thought this concept we dreamt up, and we have a catalogue of artists that we could have only dreamt of interviewing?
You know, I remember the night we talked about it. You had called me and said, with the shutdown, you're not going to be able to go in to do jazz moods on your radio show.
Yeah.
Thank goodness that's back on the air.
Yep.
But you were lamenting, what am I, all these interviews, and I was going in the first Wednesday of every month, taking part, and we sat around and we started talking about, well, what is everybody else doing? Well, people are having these Zoom meetings, and that's what started it all. I think you even went so far as say, yeah, somebody was telling me how they hate Zoom calls. I went, well, I don't know. There might be something we can do with that. So I wouldn't pass judgment. But anyway.
And also the fans of our respective jazz artists love it because they haven't seen their heroes on stage. They haven't seen them. They hear the CDs and that, but they haven't seen it. And it gives them a golden opportunity to sit there and go, there's our hero. And they sit there and there we are talking to them and that and establishing certain things about them. Anyway, it's a very warm welcome to Jazz Across the Pond from me, Roger Lee, the AKA the Jazz Cat from the United Kingdom. Good evening.
And I'm Kevin Gouldsby from the United States, and they call me Mr. G.
Yeah. Mr. G, Mr. G, Mr. G. Of course, some, myself, may refer to us as the Jerry to my Tom.
Oh, well, so I'm the Jerry to your Tom, another cat analogy.
Yeah.
All right, Jazz Cats. I mean, you are talking about the Hanna-Barbera cartoon series Tom and Jerry, right?
You are good. You are good.
Based on the old cat and mouse game where the cat never catches the mouse, right?
Yeah.
Jazz Cat?
Yeah, that's right.
Well, no matter how hard Tom tries, Jerry always manages to get the better of him.
Yeah.
Now, that's not a reflection on our relationship.
No, not at all. But,
right, Tom?
Absolutely. I agree, Jerry. But what I would say to yourself is, through all the years of it, I think deep down, they were best of buddies. They were best of friends, and they'd look out for each other and that, and a bit of a cat and mouse situation going on there. But anyway, it was just one that came to my mind. But you're very good. You're good.
When push came to shove, the two of them always managed to pull together. So in that sense, I think, not to divulge anything in the background, but we pulled each other through a few things in our time that we've known each other.
Very much.
Rather apropos.
Absolutely. So very, very quickly, last week's interview.
Wow.
Woo.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, all I can say, it's another outstanding interview with an amazing woman, Ms. Keiko Matsui. Now, most people know her for her jazz projects as a composer, performer, and producer. Yep. But we also learned that Keiko is a generous humanitarian from promoting awareness of breast cancer in her native country of Japan. Now, this was back in the 90s.
Yeah.
That she did that. And since then, that rate of cancer or deaths from breast cancer has actually gone down. But she also has addressed hunger in Africa. I mean, she's a very impressive lady with a great interview. Our 29th interview, by the way, as a matter of fact. I mean, that's hard to believe, but today with our guest today, it's number 30.
Yeah, but I agree. So Keiko Matsui, we played tracks from her most recent album. It's Echo, and it's a stunning, and we played 3 tracks from it last week. And fabulous album. Marcus Miller on there, and even Carl Eastwood, which is Clint Eastwood's son, is on there. I mean, it's just, whoa. But well worth getting. I mean, 28 albums up. This is her most recent. And she alluded to the fact that she's in the process of working on a brand new album, to which you and me were both like, wow, this is great.
And if I might mention, just for those that aren't familiar with Kyle is an accomplished bassist and composer, has his own projects and his own quartet. Yeah. So we featured him a lot on the Smooth Jazz Train. He's a great bass player. So, but I didn't know that she had utilized him on a project. So cool stuff.
Anyway, so tonight, now I'm just looking at the screen, and literally as I was just talking, that Sonny, it pinged up there, and he's sitting in beautiful California. And he's sitting there, and we've been chatting about trying to get him on, and with correspondence going back and forward, and eventually went, okay, I got a free night here, let's go for it. So I've been a big fan of his since the late 80s. So to have a chat with the man himself, great. We're going to play a track from one of his most recent albums. We are going to talk about, because he's got a brand new album coming, but we'll talk about that to the man himself. But we're going to play a track from the album Perspective, and it's all about perspective. And we're going to open up, because I feel we got a bit of good news.
Absolutely.
Yeah, what's the name of the track? Good news. So that's what we're going to hit you with. We're going to play. We're going to play a bit of good news from the album Perspective. It is a brilliant track. You're going to sit there and go, Hat Kelley, not. Whoa! When you listen, you're going to go, where do I get where do I get more of his stuff on that? And there's a whole host of his CDs, and they're all brilliant. So we're going to be introducing him. He's in the waiting room now. So sit back, enjoy this, and just enjoy the moment of this music.
Sorry.
It's brilliant. A bit of a perspective, and I'll tell you something. It is good news, because we're going to be talking to him in about 4 minutes' time. Ladies and gentlemen, Jazz Across the Pond with the Mr. G and myself, the Jazz Cat. We'll be back with you momentarily. Stay with us.
Hi, this is American jazz guitarist Pat Kelley coming to you from the Central Coast of California. You're watching me on Jazz Across the Pond with the Jazz Cat and Mr. G. Enjoy the show.
Well, that was an amazing piece of music. And as if by magic again, the man himself appears on the screen. Incredible. What can we say about this week's very, very special guest? A multi-talented guitarist, composer, arranger, producer, educator. Ladies and gentlemen, it is our great pleasure to welcome all the way from sunny California. Jazz Across the Pond says a big hello to the man himself, Mr. Pat Kelley. Hi there. How you doing, sir?
Hey, good. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
No problems at all. It's great. It's just a pleasure. And to see your guitars in the background and that, this is amazing.
Oh, yeah, right. I was just playing a few minutes ago, of course.
Oh!
Going over some music for a performance tomorrow night that I'm going to do with two other guitar players at a place in Paso Robles, California.
Oh, wow.
Cool.
Yeah.
That sounds pretty good. What we would give in United Kingdom to see people touring again. Unfortunately, we're heading the wrong way again. They're going, no tours. And we're going, oh, I want to go to Ronnie Scott's and see a jazz concert. But hey ho.
It's been crazy, yeah.
It had. Anyway, Pat, our researchers have surpassed themselves this week, compiling information about your good self. Born and raised in Tulsa, Oklahoma, you grew up playing with your dad and other guitarists, singers, and bands at the age of 5. I mean, you're pretty good at that. That's nearly a record at the moment. Playing at the age of 5. After attending a University of Tulsa with a major music composition, you then moved to Southern California in the early 1970s, where you enjoyed a flourishing career in Los Angeles, touring extensively. So would you like to please tell our followers, our loyal followers, more about that wonderful childhood, how your father got you into the music and that, and was jazz there from the beginning? Please tell us more.
Well, I wouldn't say it was really jazz at the beginning. It was just kind of learning songs and how to play the guitar. My dad was an amateur guitar player. He didn't do that for a living, so I kind of lived his dream, really. And he was, amazing support. My mom and dad both. It could not have been more supportive. I mean, they would have been disappointed, I think, because I was so passionate about it from such an early age. My dad would have some jam sessions with friends. One particular friend, Fred Daniel, who was his best friend, came over, real good guitar player, and he's still alive, and I'm still totally in touch with him. He's over 90 years old now, and he's like a kid still. He goes to guitar shows and does stuff with guitars and amps all the time, so it's really inspiring, and he lives in Memphis now, but I keep in touch with him, and I see him from time to time here and there, and if I go visit my hometown where he used to live at that time, he's often over there. But anyway, that was probably my first inspiration, those guys playing, and I just always wanted to do it, and I was really serious about it as a kid. I mean, my whole identity, my whole life has been like that, has been as a guitar player. I mean, everybody always knew me as that, of course, and I just kept playing, and never wanted to really stop. I'm still playing all the time. So.
Excellent.
Well, Pat, obviously all the time that you've spent from an early age preparing for the day like today, where you'd have an interview and could speak to those things that have happened, I would say you've had a very successful path, and I'm certain your father would be thrilled with you. But time and time again, when we read the reviews of your projects, you're recognized for your signature touch, your harmonic dexterity, your bluesy melodies, which I love, and your sense of rhythm. As a highly sought after session player, having been booked over 2,000 recording dates during your first 20 years in the music business, you have established yourself among the best guitarists on the scene for decades. With an extensive, successful career as a studio and touring musician, a recording artist, a composer, a lyricist, a producer, arranger, recording engineer, publisher, and educator. Talk about a renaissance man. Your life and your professional lessons have uniquely qualified you for the title of mentor. Now, given your extensive career, as we've mentioned, what key points of advice would you impart with aspiring young artists today?
Whew, yeah. Well, it's a different world today, that's for sure. It was a lot
Absolutely.
easier when I first came into it. There was so much work when I first went to LA. You know, the generation before me, the guys that were like 10 years, 15 years older than me, probably even, there might have even been more. But I got there when everything was still totally happening. Every session was a live band, had a live drummer,
Right.
drum machine stuff, no sequencing, none of that kind of stuff till a little bit later. So, and there were like hundreds of jingles for one thing, you know, which most of that kind of recording work now, so much was just done in a one person studio. You know, maybe they get some other people to do things, but it's, you know, not as many musicians on it. And even if you look at old television shows, you see, gosh, full orchestra scores and stuff. You know that you ever check out the music? I mean, this is just before my time probably, but Earl Hagen's music on the Andy Griffith show. Have you ever checked that out? Sometime if you get to see any reruns of that show, it is incredible. I mean, sometimes I'll see these reruns and I go, are you kidding me? They were doing, it's like Bartok or Stravinsky or something on some of this stuff. It's so hip. And
Well, you know, Pat, when we were growing up, you and I are a little closer to age than, you know, the Jazz Cat and I are. But when you and I were growing up, it wasn't unusual to watch cartoons and hear classical music, jazz music. I mean, you could hear anything, even chamber music.
yeah.
But cartoons, I mean, much less, you know, the regular television shows as well.
Yeah. Oh, some of the cartoon guys, especially the mallet players, it's guys like Emil Richards and oh my gosh, they're so good, just unbelievable. I listen to that stuff. How did they even do that? You know, but anyway, we as your original question. Wow, I mean, one of the main things is just get really good at your craft. Obviously, that's
Right.
going to give you you know, a leg up on you know, a lot of people if you're really good and you learn how to get along with people. That's, you know,
Right.
tried and true thing that everybody says, but it's so true. You have to be able to fit in as well and all that and do,
Mhm.
you know, what's necessary.
Amazing. Well, Pat, apart from your great studio albums, to which we've got the entire catalogue here, all right, right from A View to the Future. Now, you really must have had a view to a future and looked in the crystal ball, because who would have known all these years later with an entire great catalogue of TV. Now, I spent 5 years working in America, and it was 1987, and I was in New York, and I was in a record shop and they introduced me to your debut album from 1987. Wow. Oh yeah, I've still got the original one there. And
yeah.
And from there I became a follower, of course. And that was right the way up to The Wonderful Perspective, which we're going to play a track from, another great album. And I know if our researchers are correct, there's a new album on its way, but we're going to talk to you about that in a moment.
Okay.
So, now you recorded with the likes. Are you ready for this? Ready? Let's see if I can get myself ready for this. You've recorded with the likes of George Benson, Natalie Cole, David Benoit, a former guest here on the show, Jane Monheit, beautiful, Hubert Laws, Ronnie Laws, Mark Winkler, another again former guest on here, Rick Braun, Richard Elliott, Dave Brubeck, Greg Caracas, again, a former guest, Dave Collins. Yeah, Tom Scott, the late Al Jarreau, Melissa Messenger, Randy Crawford, Burt Bacharach, Olivia Newton-John. Yeah, okay then. Jose Sevillano, Styx Hooper, of course, of the Crusaders, and Carol Welsman. Carol Welsman, we've been in contact with her a couple of weeks ago. She's hopefully going to join us on the show in January. So,
good. She's super talented and close
friend. Carol Welsman. I was talking to Kevin about Carol. She is just so talented.
She's really good.
Okay, so the word is wow. Please tell our followers more about the experience with working with such an amazing, and I do use the word amazing, lineup of great musicians. From the days in Tulsa, Oklahoma, gigging with your dad and the Velomep, right up to working with that array, that an amazing list of things. What do you think? Could you have ever dreamt of that? When you were there working with your dad at 5 years, could you have ever dreamt that you'd be working with such an amazing list of artists?
I don't know if I thought of it that way, but it's funny. I never had any doubt that I could go forward in music. And I think, you know what, when I was starting to do it too, there wasn't as much worry probably as there is now for the younger guys at how am I going to make a living doing this? Because you could make money then. I mean, you can now too in some ways, but there's certain, as you know, a lot of things are gone. I mean, nobody's selling CDs like they used to, except for, you know, just a few of the total hit artists and so forth. But yeah, I guess I dreamed of playing with people and doing my own thing. I was just concentrating on the music primarily, and I started playing in bands when I was really young. My very first band, I was only in 6th grade, and we were called the Telstars. You know, we just were together for a while, played, you know, some fairs and few different shows, and we were playing mostly at that time surf music, probably because which was a really great stuff to learn how to play the guitar on. It wasn't that hard, and they were popular songs. I mean, they were on the radio and everything, and so that was kind of cool. There's not a lot of instrumental stuff like that now, so we were playing all those kind of tunes. And then, you know, by the time I was in 8th grade, I started another band. It was actually a pretty popular band in Tulsa for a teen band that was called Pat and the Panthers. And and a lot of people still remember that band this many years later. Yeah, I think if that band had been in California, I think we would have really had a shot at being a kid band, because we had like 5 good-looking guys that could all sing and play, and it was a cool thing. So that, you know, and then it just went on from there, and, you know, to one band to another, and I played in a soul band. After that, I was only 16, and I got a call from, I was the only guy, I think it was still in high school. A couple of them were in college and some out, and it was a 9-piece soul band where we did all, you know, all of Motown and James Brown stuff also, and, you know, all the stack stuff, you know, all the typical stuff with a Hammond B3 and a horn section. And that was a good experience to get me ready for certain kinds of things in studio work, or being able to play, you know, some of the gigs I've done, like George Benson's and Natalie Cole's and some of the ones like that. It kind of takes a little bit of variety to, you know, even though I consider myself, you know, more of a straight ahead jazz player than anything else now, and even started on that, you know, as a young age too. I also did all kinds of other things, like I'm talking about. So the variety of being able to play several things, even in a band like George's band, he wouldn't want a straight bebop guy playing behind him, because, you know, he's playing his thing, and there's a lot of other rhythm and R&B rhythm stuff on, you know, behind him, and all that sort of stuff. And same thing with a lot of these gigs where, you know, they wouldn't want just a strict rock guy that couldn't do the jazz thing. So kind of need a little bit of a ability to do various things.
Well, it's certainly, that demonstrates this total versatility of yourself. You know, I mean, this is why I hesitated when I said Olivia Newton-John. I mean, don't get me wrong, you know, she's fabulous. But when I dropped that name, and I did a double take, but it shows your versatility. Now, what I would say is, because your roots there was in jazz, but the fact that you were able to diversify and appear with any one of these artists, and you listen to any one of your albums, they're just so different. They just, you know, I could go through any one of these CDs and they're just absolutely stunning. Right, Kevin, question from yourself.
Yeah, I was just thinking as you said that, Pat, there's nothing like being a chameleon. You know, if you're so well versed, you can cover everything. When you're a chameleon, you just blend in with everybody else. You take your solo when it's given to you, and you don't miss a beat. But to talk a little bit about your role as an instructor, you've been an integral part of the faculty at the University of Southern California's Thornton School of Music for 24 years. You've helped guide students to become successful professional musicians. As a matter of fact, 2 of your books, Arpeggios for the Evolving Guitarist and Melodic Minor Guitar, are part of the USC Thornton School of Music's instructional series. And for anybody that might be interested, you can get both of those books. They're available through the Mel Bay Publications. That's 3 words, Mel, M-E-L, and Bay, B-A-Y Publications. So you've also been an instructor for the Monterey Jazz Festival Summer Jazz Camp for 4 years, an instructor at the Guitar College Jazz Camp for 2 years, and of course, University of Tulsa Summer Jazz Camp for 9 years. So Roger and I applaud you for your dedication as an instructor of jazz guitar. You've managed to contradict the false phrase of those who cannot do teach, and you've demonstrated the importance of those who do must teach. So, Pat, I take it you find great joy in teaching.
Well, yeah, it is a great joy, and that thing about not being able to college and junior, Bruce Foreman. I mean, there's so many top level players that teach at that particular school, and that's probably even more so nowadays because certain parts of the music business have somewhat fallen off. So you'll see a lot of the great musicians. Same thing in New York. There's a lot of top players that teach at least some. It's not maybe their whole thing. It's funny you mentioned that though about mentoring the students, because I just got a call a few minutes ago from John Story, who's I don't know if you know him, but he's in a fantastic group called the New West Guitar Group, and also plays with a whole bunch of different people. That he's a past student. He's about 36 years old now or something like that, but we're still in touch. He's one of the guys that's totally out there making it now and doing really well. He called me to see if I might be interested in going on taking over this little tour with Steve Tyrell for about 10 days coming up. So got students calling me now for that.
That's
but
cool.
Anyway, I told him I didn't think I wanted to do that right now. But anyway, even though I like Steve a lot, but that's funny that I got it. So I'm in touch with a few of the guys like that, and we do have some guys, that are making it now too, figuring out how to navigate the world.
Right.
Brilliant. I mean, Steve Tyrell, I just love that man. He is such an amazing singer. Okay.
Well, yeah, I'd go out and play his music, but I kind of just didn't want to go out on the road, fly around here right now for 10 days. So,
no, you can understand that. Okay, what we're going to do, we're going to take a very, very short break from the interview now, and we're going to play a track from your fabulous album, Perspective. And we're going to play a track called The Road Home. It's a brilliant, the whole album. It's in my car and I'm playing it all the time. I just love it. So we're going to play a track from that. And then we're going to come straight back to the interview to carry on this, because we want to find about this new album. There's a lot more things we want to find about. Your playing on the great old friends with David Benoit and Mark Winkler. We want to establish all that. So there's a lot of things still to talk about. Jazz Across the Pond with Mr. G, with myself, the Jazz Cat, and the wonderful Pat Kelley. Ladies and gentlemen, stay with us now. We're going to be straight back. Here's a bit of The Road Home. We'll be straight back with you in a moment.
Welcome back to Jazz Across the Pond, Jazz Interviews Reimagined with the Jazz Cat and Mr. G. We've been listening to The Road Home. It's a wonderful track from Pat Kelley's exceptional 2008 project, Perspective. Now, Pat, I've mentioned on a couple of occasions that I'm classically trained on clarinet and bassoon. So the multiple appearances on your resume with symphony orchestras was something that definitely intrigued me. And so if I might, I'd like to ask you a little bit about that. You have performed, if I counted correctly, with 11 symphony orchestras from the following cities: San Francisco, San Diego, Houston, Atlanta, of course, Tulsa, Denver, San Antonio, Nashville, and Toledo. You've also appeared with the Asian American Symphony Orchestra and the Auckland Symphony as well. If you would be so kind and share with our viewers how this specific type of engagement, in other words, performing with orchestra, has contributed to your role as educator and mentor. And then secondly, how rewarding personally has it been to be able to perform with symphony orchestras?
Wow. Well, all those orchestra performances have been when I was on tour with someone like the Auckland, was when I was Natalie Cole. So she would work, and some of them were Burt Bacharach, because he would do orchestra concerts like that, and a few other. The very first time I ever played with a symphony, I was still in Tulsa. I think I was 19 years old. I hadn't moved yet, and Doc Severinsen was going to be the pop or the guest with the orchestra, and they need a rhythm section for that. So I could already read music at that time, because I'd been working on that since I was about 8 years old. And so I got the call to do that. That's when I first joined the union. I think at that time. So I kind of remember that. I have no idea what we played. It's too long ago to remember that. But, and then, so most of all those, there was, let's see, one of the San Francisco concerts that I did with David Benoit, and he's also the conductor of the Asia America Symphony Orchestra. You probably know that. He's a real close friend of mine as well. But one of the, at Davies Hall in San Francisco, I did have a really strong feature on with classical guitar from one of his movie scores that I'd played on, where it was, you know, kind of nerve-wracking, but I think I did well sitting out there, because I'm not used to going out on the stage, you know, as a classical guitar. I mean, I'm only I studied some classical guitar, but I'm more of a jazz guy. But yeah, that was a cool thing. That was probably the most sitting out front feature, you know, for this one piece, especially there, and a couple other. We did. There was another gig somewhere where I learned one of the Claude Bowling guitar suites, or one movement from it. It was a concert I did with David Benoit, also, where he did several. Let's see, he had Tim Weisberg play with a flute suite, one movement of that. I played one of the guitar suites, and Dave Brubeck's son that plays cello, Chris, I think, played one of the cello ones. Anyway, we had that 3 different movements like that. So anyway, of course, it's a fun sound. I mean, to hear all that orchestra around and all that, you know.
Question.
Okay, that leads me on very nicely, because with a BMI catalogue containing more than 150 compositions that have been commercially recorded onto CDs, films, television, jingles, we already alluded to that earlier on, and your great musical library. So Pat, what gives you the biggest buzz, the satisfaction, feeling of playing that music? And we've just mentioned performing live. I know it's very difficult with COVID performing live at the moment, but what is it in the studio, compositions? What gives you the biggest buzz?
From original compositions, well, probably just hearing them come to life, I guess. When you actually hear it played. I've written quite a bit of library music for 2 or 3 companies in the past, some of them going back, you know, 30 years or so. You know, some of them still get used. I'll get some checks for some music that's pretty old, you know. So a lot of those pieces, aside from albums and stuff, would be in a library too. You know what I mean by that, I think, right? So So I wrote quite a lot of music for that, and then I have some songs on various albums, as well as, of course, some of my own albums where I was doing original, especially my earlier records where I was doing almost exclusively original tunes. The album Perspective has all original music on it, and so does Views of the Future. Yeah.
Excellent. Kevin.
So Pat, before I talk about your induction in the Oklahoma Jazz Hall of Fame, you know, I saw an interview you did with Chris Dandring on the Inside Track back in 2015.
Oh, yeah.
And you were talking about how, yeah, I mean, I've got all these gigs, you know, here in Tulsa. And, you know, I was sitting there and I was going, you're talking about this, like, at least at that point in time in 2015, and obviously COVID's probably decimated, you know, some of these places, I don't know. But you talked about how there was like 5 or 6 jazz clubs in Tulsa. And I'm going, what? Well, when I sat down and I looked at the inductees and the Oklahoma Jazz Hall of Fame, then I started to understand. So let's share a little bit with our audience. Back in June of 2003, Pat was inducted and honored in his hometown of Tulsa, Oklahoma, by being inducted into the Oklahoma Jazz Hall of Fame, joining past inductees and legends. This is another incredible list: Duke Ellington, Dizzy Gillespie, Wayman Tisdale, Charlie Christian, Chet Baker, Ella Fitzgerald, Barney Kessel, Oscar Pettiford, Dave Brubeck, and Lester Young, just to mention a few. And of course, Pat Kelley. But
Help me while I was alive.
What a group.
Chet Baker grew up just outside of Tulsa there, and there was at that time when 2015 you mentioned, my dad was ill during that time, and I started going back and visiting a lot more, so I got in touch with a lot of musicians back there and so forth at that time, more so than I had for quite a few years before that. And I ended up getting asked, I can't remember if it was that year or the following year, I forgot what year it was now, but they had a Chet Baker festival, and I got to kind of headline that thing. What I'm trying to do now is be the guitar Chet Baker, sort of, because I like to sing too, and I've been really working on that a lot more. But what I liked about the way he did it, not only his beautifully melodic playing, but he didn't really sacrifice the playing part of it. I mean, he was still a jazz player. He maybe played the melody, then maybe he'd sing it after that, or vice versa, or whatever, and he'd still solo on it and everything like that. So I'm trying to work a lot more at this point. One of the most important things to me is working on a solo show, which I've been working on, where I just play solo guitar, no tracks or anything, just me and a guitar and my voice on some songs, you know, still a lot of guitar playing, but I have a lot of solo guitar material. So I'm working on that too. I like to do other things too, but that's something that seems to be kind of my main focus.
Well, I mean, apart from that, I mean, you're such a busy man. Recently, you've also co-produced and did some arranging and played on the new George Khan CD, Dreamcatcher. And it went to number 5 on the jazz charts, just literally a few months ago. You've also played guitar on the new CD release of Old Friends. Now, Old Friends from David Benoit, Mark Winkler, they came onto our show. We chatted literally about 3 days after the release of it, and they came on, and they're 2 wonderful gentlemen. We had a fabulous conversation with them and stuff. And so you're also, because I had a message from David Benoit recently. He said, "Hi Roger," he said, "I'm working on a new project," and he wouldn't give me anything else. He wouldn't tell me any more. But now, apparently, you're also working on this new project with David Benoit. So we're very excited about this one here. So Pat, can you tell us more about your exciting project with Mr. David Benoit and what it was like working with the 2 of them on Old Friends?
Well, both of those guys I know very well. They're really good friends. David and I have known each other almost from the time I moved to LA. We played at a couple of clubs together right when he was putting out his very first record, or maybe even before that. And I played on quite a few of his things. He played on some of my earlier records as well, but and we're friends outside of that. the new thing you're talking about, I just overdubbed a couple of here in my own studio on a couple of tracks. One of them I'm totally in love with. Actually, they're both really great, but one of them I think is going to be a new hit for him. It's got such an infectious thing about it. So anyway, it was nice to be able to add some guitar to that. So with that, I didn't actually go in the studio to do with them. The one with Winkler and David, we cut those tracks in the studio with the band. And I just moved to Central California 2 months ago. So I moved out of Los Angeles, but I'm going to be going back into LA. In fact, you mentioned the George Kahn record. This coming Saturday, I'll be back in LA playing a show with him at Vitello's. It's one of the jazz clubs there in LA. And so I'm going to go back down there and do that. And then I know David is coming up here on the 2nd of October to do a thing at a winery, a friend of ours, not a playing thing, but we're going to get a piano. I told the guy that I was invited guest to this thing too. And I said, hey, I can get some music together for it. And so David's coming up, so we're going to get a piano and he'll play with us too. And, so we're really casual friends as well, as having done musical things together.
Well, if you remember, please send our regards to him, won't you?
Yeah, sure will.
Yeah, we had read that you'd moved to the Central Coast, and it was about, it said, as you did, it was 3 hours north of LA. I guess my question would be with you, is that on a good day, it's 3 hours?
Boy, that's for sure. You want to leave the right time. Well, the traffic from here to Santa Barbara, which is about halfway, is probably never going to be much of a problem. It's getting pretty contested between there and LA, so certain times of day. I do have another route I can go, though, from where I am. I can cut over to, you may not know the highways here, but over here, but I can cut over to another highway, Highway 5, and go down and kind of miss all the certain parts of that traffic. Right. So yeah, it is something I'll plan as far as what time I go, so I'm not just hitting it during rush hour.
Right.
Okay,
right.
Now what I would like to say, because unfortunately, Lady, time is not on our side and it's running out. And apart from the wonderful collection, we will be playing also, near the end of the interview, we're going to be playing a track from your wonderful album, Reset, which is a brilliant album. But of course, also, I know one of your fabulous albums is Overtures for Two Guitars. And I know you sent Kevin and myself a message last night. Kevin, you got a question about this one, yes?
Well, actually, I've got a question about, again, Pat kind of let the cat out of the bag, since we like to use those kind of analogies.
What I do?
So we heard through the grapevine that you've got another solo CD that's due to release before the end of the year. We wanted to know, was that gonna happen? We've got our fingers crossed, but then the bigger question is, would you mind sharing with us what guest artist you might have on this new project?
Well, to be honest, I'm a little mixed up right now about exactly what I'm going to put out. I've got a bunch of material compiled that I went through kind of during the pandemic, and various things, and I've kind of been back and forth about exactly what I want to do with it. So, and when is a good time to release it? So,
right.
Gosh, to be honest, I'm not quite sure. I have some really cool material and various things that I never released that I've kind of put together as well. And I should have put some of this stuff out. So I'm kind of deciding whether to put together that project, which I've already got basically an album's worth of stuff for that. And so I don't know. That's not a very good answer, but I'm working on music. So.
Okay, so we've got then, as we've already established, from 1987, we've got A View to the Future. And apparently, am I right in saying the new CD coming out is Sing Me Back Home? So where can our followers purchase and buy any of your wonderful collection of CDs and music?
Yeah, real quick, that one is already out. The Sing Me Back Home is one that's the latest one that I actually put out. So that's been out a couple of years now. And that was kind of an unusual CD that I did with some singers, basically featuring 5 singers. And I pretty much played everything on that record almost. I had a couple of I had a fiddle player play on a song and a flute player play on one, but or do an overdub on it. But other than that, I played bass and drums and guitar and everything on that. Filled it all in behind these singers. And I forgot what your question was now. I went off on it.
Just talking about, we're just generally saying, where can people buy your CDs? What we were saying.
Oh, boy, that's a tough thing now because there aren't any record stores hardly. So it's I know it's really a weird deal, people trying to actually find that. So everybody's starting to download everything almost. So, probably all the typical places for that. It's, gosh, it's sad. It used to be so much fun to go into the record store and, browse through and, there may be some of those left. They've almost all disappeared. It's crazy.
Well, in fact, we've got just under 4 minutes. So I'm going to turn it over to Roger because I know he's wanted to finish it up. So.
Yeah, so basically, Pat, thank you. We can't thank you enough for joining us here on the show. It has been an absolute, and to think that in 1987, when I bought that album in New York City, and that years later, here would we, with my good friend Kevin, that would be talking to the man himself. We can't thank you enough for taking time out of your day. You're a very busy man. You're saying about you're going on a show tomorrow and that. We're going to be finishing the interview from an album from Reset. We're going to be playing Jazz Fest. Pat, it is an absolute joy to talk to yourself. It really is. And I'm now going to revisit a lot of your music and some of your guest appearances you've done on some of the albums with David Benoit, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Pat, thank you so much for joining us, sir.
Thank you so much for having me. Really appreciate it.
Our pleasure.
Say goodnight, Kevin.
Good night, Kevin.
And it's good night from Pat Kelley, and it's good night from myself. Next week, Nico Henry from Miami will be joining us, and another great interview. From everyone here, Jazz Across the Pond, take care, look after, stay safe. And until next time, from all of us, good night. Bye.